There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hello and welcome again to another episode of The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I want to welcome you back. For those of you who've been here before, for those of you it's your first time, you're going to enjoy it. What we're going to talk about today is something that's very essential. But I want to let you know that Productive Podcaster is a podcast for podcasters. It's dedicated to help you to be more productive as a podcaster. Now, productive can be a relative term. It could mean that you have a lot of listeners. It could mean you have several downloads. It could mean that you have a lot of people you're helping. It could mean you're making a lot of money. It could mean you have a lot of sponsors. It could mean any of those things and all of those things. It's up to you as to what productivity means and when it comes to your podcast. What we want to do is bring you some information and some tools to help you to achieve whatever that goal is for you and whatever that goal is for your particular podcast. Now, as I like to say, when we begin every Productive Podcaster episode, we like to do one thing. Yeah, you've guessed it, those of you who've been here before. That is pros and cons.
Pros and cons.
Now, what is pros and cons for those of you who don't know? What we do is we give you some information, some tips, if you will, to help you to be more professional as a podcaster. If you do these things, some of you will see some success. If you don't, some of you may not. Today, we're talking about your voice. That's right, knowing your voice. When you start out with your podcast, a lot of times your voice is not where it will be a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. Now, I'm not saying that whether your voice is squeaky, loud, whatever. I'm saying whether you know how to communicate effectively on the microphone. The audience needs to hear that you're confident about what you're talking about. The audience needs to know that you feel good behind that mic and that you're enjoying what you're doing. You, as the podcaster, control the energy. That's right. You control the energy. I know that may scare some of you, but the fact is, you're in control. You're in charge. So what happens is people tune into your podcast, and if you're sounding like this and you don't want to really talk too loud and you sound real monotone, they pick up on that. They don't want monotone. They don't want timid. They want you to lift them up. I know some of you may do your podcast based solely on education and informing people, and that's great. But you also have to be able to communicate with a voice that says, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I'm confident about what I'm talking about, and I'm ready to get you this message at a level that you can actually feed off of because it has so much energy and it's so effective. Now, I want you to think about projecting your voice. Think about how you can get your voice out there to reach more people. Think about a newscaster. Think about a newscaster. A newscaster can be giving some very serious news to someone. They can be really telling you about something that's, world changing, but they don't sound monotone when they do it. Not the ones that you want to listen to. The ones that you want to listen to compel you to listen more. They bring you into the story. This is what you have to do when you're doing your podcast. You want to make sure that you project your voice to bring them in, to make them want to listen to you. Because if they don't want to listen to you, they will listen to someone else. And that will bring your podcast down. So instead of having your podcast go down, bring your energy up and let the people come with you as you bring your energy up and uplift your podcast. That is your pros and cons for today on The Productive Podcaster. We will be right back after this message with a very, very special guest.
You've heard the
even thought about starting your own, but how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all of the hard work for you so that you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. Again, I'm Barrett Matthews. I have to tell you, I'm excited about the guest I have for you today. This woman I've known for some years now, and she has helped me. She's helped me personally become who I am as far as the Productive Podcaster, because she's helped me be productive and profitable. So she is going to be here today to talk to you. I've been fortunate enough to share the stage with her, work with her, and just have some fun with her. So I'm excited to bring on with us right now none other than Darnyelle Jervey Harmon. Darnyelle, let me get you on the screen here, and that way we can get you going. Hold on one second. Start the video. There we go. There we go. All right. Darnyelle, welcome to the Productive Podcaster. How you doing?
I am great, Barrett. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to come and hang out with you and your peeps on the Productive Podcaster.
Well, you know, I love talking to you. You know, you and me, we down like 4 flat tires. So your podcast is called Leverage Your Incredible Factor. It's a business podcast, right?
The Leverage Your Incredible Factor business podcast. Yep.
I love it. I love it. Now, see, those who don't know you like I do, please tell them about the Incredible Factor.
Yeah, absolutely. So about 7 years ago, I got tired of working with clients who were not able to clearly and succinctly articulate that what made them different in the marketplace. And so I created a formula to make it easy for them to be able to identify those things about themselves that make them the only and obvious choice for their most ideal clients, i.e. the incredible factor. It has 3 components: your hot, undeniable gift, which is that thing that you do that when you do it, other people praise you for it. You typically will downplay and dismiss it because it's innate in you, but your innate gifts shift and change things for other people. That's your hug or hot, undeniable gift. The second component is your signature business move. Your signature business move is the process, the framework, the system that you utilize every single time you're working with a client to make success predictable for them. It's what will not only get you known, but what will get you paid well when you have a signature process that you've perfected through working with clients and you have real actionable results to prove it. And then the third component is your unique value proposition, which talks about what makes you different and compelling, because consumers are programmed to notice differences. And so if you show up in the marketplace like everybody else who technically does what you do, they will gloss right over you. But as soon as you stick out like a sore thumb, you get their attention. And then you start speaking to them in a message that resonates and that highlights the problems that they have, they will begin to move in your direction, which will increase your traction, give you the opportunity to nurture them, and eventually get them into a conversation to enroll them into your products and services.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I'm going to tell you guys, like I said, she's worked with me and she's helped me do this, and she's the truth. I'm not joking when I talk about Darnyelle. Darnyelle is the truth. And when you're talking about your podcast, does your podcast work with individuals on there, or are you talking to people about what you do and how you can just help them?
I do both. So the way that I structure my podcast is I typically will do 2 solo insights a month, 1 guest interview a month, and 1 business makeover. So people who have wanted to work with me that maybe they can't afford to work with me, I will invite them to be a guest and I'll make their business over live on an episode of the podcast.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, I want you to please tell the people watching here and listening about your results that you've had with clients.
Oh, yeah. So I have been in business for 13 years. I have been coaching and consulting for 11 years. And my entrepreneur clients have generated a combined $85 million.
So say that one more time.
Yeah, so my entrepreneur clients have generated a combined $85 million in about 10 years. So that's an average of $8.5 million per year. What that breaks down to each individual client is growth between 50 and 600% in 12 months time. So I know what I'm doing. I know business, and I'm able to create an environment where success is massive. Most businesses, if they grow at all, are growing by 10%, but my clients are getting the competitive edge and they're growing way more based on my incredible factor and what it is I bring to the table for them.
I love it. I love it. And that's why I am having her as a guest on a productive podcast, because the woman, she oozes productivity. And that's the thing. And her clients, of course, ooze profitability. So I want to make sure I had her here for you guys so you can actually learn from Darnyelle. Now, let's talk about your podcast. When did you put that together?
So we are in season 2. So we started in January of 2019. Mm-hmm. And I love it. It is the category for my podcast is spirituality. So it's actually not in the business podcast. And we go back and forth. Sometimes we're talking about mindset and spirituality, and sometimes I'm talking about practical business strategy. But I wanted to put it in the spirituality category because I think businesses that have a spiritual foundation go farther faster. And so we've got 58 episodes right now, which has been awesome. I'm loving every minute of it. Yeah, and for those of you, if you've ever been to one of Darnyelle's live events, it's a spiritual experience. It is truly a spiritual experience. God, it seems like so funny. It was a year ago, but that time flew by. But the thing is, I've been to her events and they are a spiritual experience. So I understand why you categorize your podcast as that. So what got you started on it? How did you get started doing that podcast? Yeah, so I had, prior to my podcast, I was doing a weekly video every single Wednesday. And we still take the podcast and load it up as a video, but I wanted a different platform. And podcasting was starting to become even more popular. And so I said, let's try our hands at podcasting. And I love it. It's a platform or a forum for me to just say what's on my mind. So I don't have to come to teach a lesson. I could just talk. I tell my story. I talk about the things that are going on in my life. I bring on guests to talk about business. It's like having my own TV show, but having it in a medium that allows me to speak to the entire world. Our podcast is in 40 countries around the world right now, which is pretty awesome. I wouldn't, maybe never, if I was on TV, traditional TV, I might not reach 40 different markets.
Very true.
Like I am in my podcast. And it's been great. I initially started it as an outlet, not to make money or to even get clients from it. But now we're creating a strategy to actually use it as one of our primary lead generator tools so that we can get people either enrolled in our programs or buying our products and services. And it's been amazing to make that shift, to go from just doing it because I wanted to have a platform where I could say whatever was on my mind, to now turning it into an actual productive strategy so we can make money from it.
So I hope you guys are catching that, what she just said there, because your podcast can be used as a lead generator and it can be used to generate profits by selling your product and services. So Darnyelle, if I'm hearing you correctly, sounds like you're telling people that it's a good idea to have products and services.
Absolutely. We primarily, and Barrett, of course, knows this because he's been a client. My programs start at 10K. So what I do on my podcast is, of course, I'm not trying to get people to buy a 10K thing because they just started working with me. So I have a planner that we created for our clients that now we sell to the general population. So we're selling planners every week. I also have a Grow Your Business Toolkit, which is an introduction to my work and it teaches people how to look at their business based on the pillars of business optimization that we sell on the podcast. Both of those things are under $1,000. I mean, they're actually under $300 each of those things. And the sales are coming in every single week. So it's like butter money. I'm just talking and saying what I say. I have a little snippet of a commercial that runs on my podcast that talks about it, and people go and buy one or the other.
Wow. And what she's saying, I tell you, I implemented this stuff. It's helped me. I'm asking you guys, if you're serious about your business, you may want to take her up on it. Look, Darnyelle never asked me to say any of this, but I'm saying it because it worked for me, and I want to make sure that you guys are successful too. I see we got our purple on. I got your purple in the back. I got my purple, my incredible factor going too. So I want to ask you, what is your target audience for your podcast?
Yeah, so we are targeting primarily women entrepreneurs that are not just starting. So our listeners are usually 3 years plus in business, but they still haven't cracked the code to get beyond the 6-figure mark. And they have a desire to learn how to leverage and scale their businesses so that they can build businesses that fund the life that they crave. And so that's who we're talking to, who we're targeting. Of course, we're going to get some people who are brand new, and I've even had a person who doesn't even have a business who ended up sending us an email and wanted to have a conversation with me about working together because they were so inspired by what we share on the show, but they currently are a full-time employee. So we get a little bit of everything. Mostly women would be who we're focused on. And I'm focused on the clients that I serve every single day. So the majority of our clients are women entrepreneurs and service-based businesses that have been in business 3 years or more.
Now, how important is it for someone starting a podcast to actually know which target someone?
Very important, because messaging starts everything. And so like even with the pillars of business optimization, they're mindset, messaging, marketing, sales, operations, talent, leadership, and legacy. Well, you got to have your message first. So even before I started my podcast, we created the core messaging and what the show was going to be about. I had to write the little blurb that goes on Apple Podcasts. I had to come up with a tagline. So all of that stuff needed to be contrived before I started speaking. I keep a content calendar for my podcast of when I'm releasing which episodes about what, when I'm bringing on which guests about what, all because everything that we do is around a purpose for that core message and the marketing that we want to use. This podcast is one of our marketing tools. So it's a consistent, every week, evergreen tool that we're utilizing to constantly put us in front of people who would be our ideal clients.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, you mentioned that your podcast is in several different countries. How amazing is that you're getting people from different countries? And how have you drawn business from that as well?
We've sold a few planners so far from other countries. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Like I remember in 2015, I spoke at the $1 Million Roundtable, and it was an international speaking engagement, and I was translated into 6 or 7 languages in the back of the room. So being able to look at our KPIs for our podcast and to see where people are listening and downloading from is so surreal, because how else would a girl from the projects in Wilmington, Delaware get to Sri Lanka as an example, which is one of the countries where people are listening.
Wow.
So it's just amazing to think that we're able to do that with this particular platform and technology.
Wow. Now, because I know how you think. So what is the next step for your podcast?
Yeah, so my next step is true monetization. So I am after really beefing up the visibility of it. So now we're starting to run ads on specific episodes. We are targeting guests that have more influential platforms. So when we bring them on our podcast, their listeners will come and they'll subscribe, because eventually I want to get to the point where I'm able to get sponsorship because of my podcast. Oh,
that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Now, so you've got this audience right now without sponsorship?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, just me and my weekly doing it myself. Like
you're doing it yourself.
I record the episodes, and then, my team and I, we edit it, and we have the little image and all of that stuff, but we're not using a company or anything. We're doing it all in-house, and just us, just being out there on the platform. Our podcast is syndicated to a lot of podcast distributors. So you can get us on Apple, you can get us on Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and there's like a host of other ones that are not as popular. So we're syndicated everywhere. We use our keywords. So everything that you apply in marketing for your business, we're doing that on the podcast. Every episode of the podcast becomes a blog on our website. We load it to LinkedIn. We put it on YouTube. So we're distributing it in every way that we can so that we can increase our viewership and listenership, because again, the end game is to be able to use this as another revenue stream.
Exactly. Now, you mentioned something a second ago I want to touch on before we wrap up. You mentioned your team. How important is it to have a team work with you?
Oh, it's essential. There's no way you can scale your business if it's just you. You can grow it. You can even leverage it, but you cannot scale if you're the only one in the business. There's nothing to scale if you're the only one, because your business requires you to function.
So as far as your team, what kind of things do they do to help make your podcast successful?
Yeah, so I have a marketing manager who helps with the distribution. So she makes sure it goes everywhere it needs to go. She makes everything pretty and all of that kind of stuff. I have a sound tech that does all of the editing and pulling it all together so that when it's put on the podcast, it sounds professional, like it's an actual show and not that I just made it in my home. And then I have my assistant actually is the one who focuses on finding the guests for the podcast. So I've given her specific criteria, and she goes out and she finds people that have platforms and levels of influence that would add value to our show, that would also get us new listenership to come in. So it's a team effort, definitely. I'm the talent. I conduct the interviews, or I do the solo episodes. I do the business makeovers, but the rest of my team does everything else to make it run.
That's good. That's good. So I want you to please let everyone know where they can, first of all, the name of your podcast again, and let them know where they can find it as well.
Yeah, so the Leverage Your Incredible Factor Business Podcast. And you can find it if you just go to incrediblefactorpodcast.com. You'll find it. We produce it through Podbean. And then, like I said, it's syndicated on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. So if you go and search for the Leverage Your Incredible Factor Podcast or my name, Darnyelle Jervey Harmon, you'll find it.
And that's what I want to do, is thank Darnyelle Jervey Harmon for joining me here on a productive podcast. But guys, reach out to her, listen to her podcast, take notes, take copious notes, because she gives a lot of information in a short period of time, and you will be wishing that you had taken notes, because it's something you want to take with you everywhere you go. I want to thank you, Darnyelle, for being on today with me, and I appreciate you so much for just being there for me when I need you. So thank you so much, and you enjoy your day and stay safe.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
You've heard the rumblings. You've even thought of starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all the hard work for you so you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or just go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
We're back to the Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I'm excited. Now, first of all, weren't you all excited about the guest we just had? Oh my goodness, Darnyelle Jervey Harmon. I love her. She knows I do. That's my girl right there. I just think she's wonderful, and I think everybody can learn from her. Check out her podcast. Get your incredible factor going. Check out her podcast. I love Darnyelle. Darnyelle is an amazing person, and she's helped so many people to achieve their goals in business. So you can do the same. Just get in touch with her. Now comes the time I love PodQuest.
PodQuest
is a great part of the show. I love PodQuest because it gives you a chance to find out what the audience is thinking. It gives us a chance to dig into the mindset of other people. Now, PodQuest lets us listen to what the people are thinking. You put your comments in our feed in the tribe there, our Facebook group, or you can just type it, while we're doing the show. We'll get to it. A lot of times it's from our previous guest and we bring it up the next week. So actually, this one is about our episode of one of our first episodes with David Renault. Someone asked about how they can get a podcast going that engages different languages. And I put the question out to David. And one of the things that he is saying to you is that, first of all, make sure you're fluent in your language. And he said you can get a team together. That's one of the things you can do is you can get a team together and you have to figure out what languages you want to translate into. Now, as you might have heard when he was on the show, they do Spanish, and he was talking about doing Spanish in different countries because, Spanish has different types of dialects in different countries. But the thing is, and as far as what David was telling us, is that you want to make sure that which language you're doing and find out where they speak that language. Find out where they want to speak that language. It sounds real simple, doesn't it? Find out where they speak that. So let's say French, for instance. Well, of course, you got France, and you have some parts of Canada. But there are other places that speak French. There are some places in Africa that speak French. So these are places where you can get your podcast if you're talking about a podcast that has translation in it. Take all of these things in consideration when you're building your podcast. I'm glad that you asked that question because that's a question I'm sure many people might have, but didn't know how to ask or are afraid to ask it to David. So I'm glad that you did bring that up about how to get your podcast going if you want to deal with different languages. So thank you so much for that question in PodQuest. So now it is time for our podcast profile. This is where we generally bring up someone who has a podcast and we just want to highlight them. Now, just like David Renault, as I just mentioned, who was one of our previous guests, I want to talk about this lady. Her name is Lauren Passel, and she is with a company called Lasso. They don't have a podcast, but what they do, and I love this, and I need to give her a call, they work with authors, to help them podcast. So if you're an author, you may want to contact them about getting a podcast going so they can help you promote your book or your topic of your book through a podcast. I met Lauren at a conference, and she was one of the first people I met, and we sat down and talked. They're up in New York, and I just thought it was amazing that they do that because there are a lot of authors out there who have podcasts, and there are a lot of podcasters out there who want to put a book out and vice versa. So it's a good way to get both of those going. So I recommend contacting Lauren at Lasso, Lauren Passel at Lasso, just like, the lasso with the cattle. Lasso, that's the people you need to talk to. I love her for that. Way to go with that. Now, the next thing going on with the Productive Podcaster, who can guess? That's right. It is our giveaway. Now, you're probably wondering, what is the giveaway? Well, the giveaway is our way of giving back to our clients, giving back to our followers, giving back to our listeners and our viewers. What we do, as long as you subscribe to the Productive Podcaster and you share the Productive Podcaster with other people, we are going to enter you into a drawing where you get a chance to win something. Well, today's prize winner is Dakisha Williams. Dakisha Williams, you are going to get an audio copy of my best-selling book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? That's right, you get an audio copy of my best-selling book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? I hope you enjoy it. I hope you can share that with other people as well. But if you want to be a part of the giveaway, you want to get a prize, all you have to do is make sure you join us, Productive Podcaster, join our tribe, and share the Productive Podcaster with other people, because there are so many other people who would love to hear what we have going on, and it's up to you to make sure that they hear it. Now, I love doing this next part of the Productive Podcaster. I do, because it's one of my favorite things to do, and that is to give a productivity quote. That's right, to give a productivity quote. That's one of the things that we do here at the Productive Podcaster, we want to promote you being productive. So our productivity quote today comes from someone whose name I have difficulty pronouncing. Is Adewale Koyenikan. I think I might have got it right. Koyenikan. Adewale Koyenikan. He's the author of the book Wealth for All: Living a Life of Success at the Edge of Your Ability. I'm kind of tongue-tied today. Adewale Koyenikan, Wealth for All: Living a Life of Success at the Edge of Your Ability. That's the name of his book. And his quote is, time management is also about life management. Time management is about life management. Woo, this one hits home with me because I'm one of those people who does not believe that there is such a thing as time management. I don't believe there's such a thing as time management, and I will tell you why. There are 60 seconds in a minute. There are 60 minutes in a day. There are 24 hours in a day. There are 7 days in a week. There are 12 months in a year. That is time. Guess what? You can't manage that. It's going to be the same no matter what. You can't do a thing with it. So it's not time management. It's about you, your life. What are you going to manage? A lot of people don't want to admit that it's about managing themselves, so they put it on time, so they don't have to focus on themselves. It is actually you that has to be managed. So time management is about life management. I love that quote. Time management is about life management. So that concludes another episode of the Productive Podcaster. I thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you'll continue to share and you'll join us again next week for the Productive Podcaster. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.